Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we will talk about how you can bring your story to paper. So of course there are already some videos out there about the whole process of writing a story, but I think they don't focus enough on the emotional part of writing. So I will also focus on that and give you some tips on how to minimize procrastination and demotivation. And hopefully this whole thing will work and you will very soon write down your own stories. I'm mainly going to focus on screenwriting here, but this also works for your novel. For the purposes of this video, I will use Red Umbrella, which is a short film we made 1 year ago, as an example. So the first thing you want to do before you even think about creating your story is setting a deadline. For beginners, a good number for this deadline would be 2 to 3 months. For a short story and for a novel, of course, more. Of course, if you're more advanced, you can shorten this time, and if you think you need more, you can of course always give yourself more time. But I would set it to a maximum of 1 year. So after you have a deadline in your head, write it down and put it somewhere where you can see it every day. After that, tell it to as many people as possible. Writing it down and telling it to people will force you to have finished your script or your short story by the deadline. So let's talk about the basic process of creating your story. So first of all, you have an idea, then you move on to structuring, and then you move on to writing. Many people leave out this second point, structuring, which in my opinion is a huge mistake. Because just think about it. You just have a vague idea and then you directly want to write the whole story. This is very, very hard. And things that are hard cause procrastination. So just make it easier for yourself. Why make it hard? Use structuring. Okay, now let's move on to the detailed version of this writing process. So first of all, you of course have an idea. This idea can be anything. It can be a philosophical thought, a picture, a person, a character, whatever, or just a scene or a chapter. But you need to write it down as soon as you have the idea. I know this already can be very hard to people. Sometimes you just don't want to get a piece of paper and a pencil. So make sure you always have some paper and pencil at your side. Maybe in your pocket, or you can also use this handy device, the mobile phone, which I don't have here. For Red Umbrella, I had this simple idea of a girl sitting on a bench and a guy standing next to her with a red umbrella. So after you have defined your idea and you have written it down, you can move on to the logline. What is that? A logline is some sort of a pitch. So it's a short description of your whole movie, a more defined idea, you could say. And this logline should get people excited to watch your movie or to fund it. So the logline for Red Umbrella could be something like: a young girl chasing her dreams learns that one good gesture can outperform many bad ones. So after you have defined your logline, tell it to as many people as possible. Of course your friends and family, but also to strangers, so you can get some opinions on the whole story. Of course, this whole thing also counts for your novel and short story, but you probably call it a pitch then and not a logline. So after idea and logline are defined, we move on to your overall goal. So there are not many filmmakers that tell you to do that, but I think it's a very important thing as well. Because the overall goal defines why you want to make this movie or why you want to write this novel. The overall goal is the reason you do this thing. You can define this overall goal by asking why. So for Red Umbrella, for example, we could say we want to show what one small gesture can do. So why do we want to do that? Because if many people know what one small gesture can do, they will also start to help other people with just talking to them or with just helping them in a very small way, which has a very big impact. Okay, why do we want people to help each other? Because if people help each other, the world becomes a happier place. And there we have it, our overall goal. We want to show the world what one small gesture can do to make the world a happier place. This then can motivate yourself or even others if you have a team, for example. Of course, this doesn't work always, but for me it works very often. You could probably say most of the time. Now we need to define the characters of our story. So we can do this with the so-called story circle. I won't go into detail because there are already many videos out there about it, so you can just type it in on YouTube if you want to know more. But a story circle is just a little bit of help to define your characters. For example, for Red Umbrella, of course we need a protagonist, we need a girl that wants to achieve a dream. For this film we chose Emma, a girl that wants to be part of a poetry contest. Okay, so we already have our protagonist. So now we need a person that can show her what one small good gesture can do. In our case that would be John. And of course we also need some obstacles or an antagonist that stops her from achieving this goal so easily. In Red Umbrella this could be Schulte as one person, or we could also define that the whole school society is the antagonist or the obstacle. And now we already have defined our characters. But of course remember, use the story circle to make them more three-dimensional. So after we have defined our characters, we move on to structuring. First of all, we do some rough outlining. Many people use brainstorming and mind maps. I also use brainstorming because I think it's very important to get all your ideas onto paper. But then I instantly move on to the structure board. So what is this structure board? So what you first need to know is that every film or also novel has some kind of structure. You don't need to worry about that now, but you need to know that there are some kind of structures. On a storyboard we can define some points in the story and put them onto this board. Or in a short film it would look something like this. Again, don't worry about it. There are also a lot of videos about the structuring of filmmaking or writing your novel. After we have defined the points on the board, we can now put our scenes there. And for every scene you have on your board, you should really think about why you put it in your film or why you put a chapter in your book. And if you don't find a good reason, just take it away again. So why do we do this? Just think about restructuring. If we take one scene in our script and want to put it somewhere else, this becomes very difficult because you have to find new transitions on how to make this whole thing work. If you just do it on your board, you just take the scene and put it somewhere else. The second reason why we do this is you don't have to sit in front of a blank page again. A big blank white page can be very intimidating. And this little post-it, where you just have to write down your scene and a short description, I mean, that is pretty easy. So again, the structure board makes the whole process easier, and so you are not as likely to start procrastinating or to be unmotivated. But after you have every scene on this board, you can finally start writing your first draft. So once again, you sit in front of a blank page. And of course, this can be very intimidating. But just remember, you have already defined all your scenes. They're right next to you on your structure board. Now you just have to write them down into one script. For your first draft, I would suggest to just write it down. Don't go back, leave blank spaces, leave notes where you think you need to change things. At the end, your first draft will probably look like a crossword puzzle. But this is alright, because now you have something to edit. So now is the time to edit. I think it's easier to edit a script and make it good than to just write down a very good first draft. Now you can define all the unresolved ideas, you can fill in the blank spaces and erase the notes. After you have done that, you can give your screenplay to people and receive some criticism. Be open to everything, every idea from every person, because everyone can see something you don't see. And of course, criticism can be very hard and it can break your heart, but it is very important for your screenplay or your novel. After you have received some critique, you again start to edit. After you are finally done and you have your final draft. Be proud of yourself. Now you have created the story of your short film, novel, feature film or short story. Now you can keep it like that, try to sell it, or you can move on and make a full movie out of it. So I hope this guide could help you to start writing your story. For the end, I want to remember you that you will feel demotivated, but you can't just not write if you're demotivated. Inspiration and motivation will come as soon as you start writing. And I also want you to remember that you will procrastinate. Procrastination is a very humane thing, and the goal is not to stop it, but to minimize it as much as possible. For the end, I want to leave you with this thought. So every single one of us lives a life defined by different values, different people and different events. And therefore I think we are all individuals that have a unique story to tell, to bring to paper and to publish to the world. If you like this video, please show it with a thumbs up. And if you generally like what we are doing, consider subscribing. That's all for today and I will see you in the next video. Keep on being creative. Bye.